the psychology behind why married men desire forbidden women. You probably believe that when a man already has someone, has built a family, has made eternal promises, he is out of your reach. That the right thing is for you to retreat, accept defeat, and move on. But the truth that no one has the courage to say is this: men do not choose for reason. They choose where they feel something awaken within them, something that has perhaps been dead for years, buried under routine and obligations. This video isn't about cheap tricks or about putting yourself down. It's about the deep psychology of male desire through the lens of Carl Jung, and how you can become the presence that moves you on a level that goes beyond any signed role. Does it seem impossible? Well, know that a document does not kill attraction, and when a man feels truly alive by his side, he begins to question everything he swore to protect. Let's get straight to the point. Here are the internal transformations that make him choose you, even when he should choose to stay. 1. The dark side. He hides from everyone. Carl Jung discovered something that society prefers to pretend does not exist. Every man carries within him a dark part, a psychological territory full of desires, impulses, and fantasies that he would never reveal out loud. We are not talking about wickedness or perversion. We are talking about everything he learned to repress in order to be accepted, to appear correct, to maintain the image of a good husband and family man. Since he was a child, he was taught to hide his most primitive instincts. He was trained to be responsible, predictable, reliable. He learned that expressing too intense desire is wrong, that wanting things outside the social script is shameful. So he built a perfect mask, the committed, stable man who does everything right. But underneath this mask, the shadow lives on, pulsating, growing stronger and stronger the more it is ignored. That part of him doesn't disappear just because he put a ring on his finger. It is still there, in the subsoil of consciousness, waiting for any breach to emerge. And do you know when she finds that breach? When someone comes along who doesn't demand this behaved and controlled version from him. Someone who, without even trying, allows him to feel again those impulses that were buried so long ago. The forbidden woman represents just that. The unconscious permission for him to access parts of himself that have been locked away. With her, there is no charge to be the perfect provider, the exemplary husband, the man without flaws. There is an invisible freedom that he cannot name, but that he feels in his body every time he is close to her. It's as if finally he can take off the heavy armor he's been carrying for years. His official relationship has become yet another obligation. It became a performance. He needs to be strong, decisive, always in control. You need to solve problems, make decisions, keep everything running. There is no room for genuine vulnerability, for chaos, for the unpredictable. Everything has become mechanical, predictable, too safe. And the shadow hates security. It feeds on intensity, on risk, on being truly alive. When he looks at you, something inside him recognizes a chance to integrate that rejected part. It's not about cheating for the sake of cheating. It's about feeling whole again, even if in a distorted and destructive way. He's not just looking for another woman. He's looking for himself, that version of himself that has been suffocated under years of expectations and responsibilities. Jungian psychology teaches us that the more we repress the shadow, the more power it gains over us. And this married man, who has built a life on control and predictability, eventually reaches a point where the shadow becomes stronger than his conscious will. He begins to fantasize, to look for risky situations, to feel a magnetic attraction to everything he should avoid. You didn't create that dark side in him. He was always there. You have only become the mirror where he can finally see that part of himself reflected without immediate judgment. And that's incredibly powerful, because every human being longs to be seen in their entirety, including the parts they've learned to hide from the world. When you show up and, without even realizing it, offer this silent recognition, he feels something he hasn't felt in years, the dangerous, addictive feeling of being truly alive. 2. When routine kills desire. There is a specific moment in the life of any long relationship where something fundamental dies silently. Mystery. In the beginning, there was constant discovery, tension, that excitement of not knowing exactly what comes next. But over time, everything becomes too familiar. He knows exactly how she's going to react, what she's going to say, even what the next 5 years will be like. And the human brain wasn't programmed to be excited by predictability. Routine turns passion into logistics. What used to be a meeting full of expectation is now just coordinating schedules, dividing tasks, discussing bills. Sex, when it happens, follows an almost identical script every time. Same time, same way, same conclusion. There is no longer any surprise. There is no longer that butterflies in the stomach, that urgency that made time stop. It has become another item on the list of things to do before bed. He looks at his own life and realizes that everything has become mechanical. He wakes up at the same time, drives the same route, has the same superficial conversations, watches the same programs, sleeps on the same side of the bed, day after day, week after week, year after year. The feeling of being trapped in an invisible cage begins to suffocate him, even if he can't put it into words. It is a vague anguish, a constant discomfort that he tries to ignore but that never completely disappears. The wife has become predictable not because of her, but because deep intimacy has this side effect. It eliminates mystery. He knows her every reaction, every insecurity, every pattern of behavior. There's nothing else to discover, and worse, she also knows him too deeply. She sees her weaknesses, her fears, her failures. There is no way to pretend greatness in front of those who have seen you in the worst moments. His image became small, real, too human. Then you appear, shrouded in complete mystery. He doesn't know his quirks, his daily defects, his 3 o'clock crises in the morning. You are a blank canvas where he can project all the fantasy he wants. With you, he doesn't have to be the man tired of overdue bills. He can be the idealized version of himself, that interesting, seductive, energetic guy he used to be before life tamed him. The male brain responds viscerally to novelty. Studies show that the brain's reward system fires intensely in the face of the new, the unexpected, the unknown. It's pure dopamine running through your veins, that chemical that causes addiction. And after years of breathing the rarefied air of routine, when he meets someone who reactivates this dormant system, the feeling is of resurrection. He feels young again, powerful, alive in a way he forgot was possible. Every message from you is an event. Each encounter is charged with electrical voltage. There is no room for boredom because everything is still being discovered. He doesn't know how you're going to react, what you're going to say, what surprise you keep. This unpredictability is like pure oxygen for someone who is suffocating in sameness. And the more he feels this brutal difference between the dead routine of home and the vibrant intensity of being with you, the harder it is to resist. The tragedy is that he doesn't realize one thing. If the two of you built a life together, you'd eventually fall into the same trap. The mystery would disappear, the routine would set in, and he would be back at the beginning, looking for the next source of novelty to fill the void. But at this moment, he can't see it. All he feels is that finally, after so long, something inside him has started pulsing again. Desire isn't random, it's your unconscious seeking wholeness through the forbidden. Understand the real pattern inside the Jung Method. Link pinned in the first comment. Let's continue. 3. You as a mirror of his soul. Every man carries within him an unconscious image of the perfect woman. Jung called this the anima, the female counterpart that exists in the male psyche. She is not a real person, but a collection of characteristics, energy, and qualities that represent everything he lacks in himself. It is the muse that inhabits his dreams, the presence he seeks without knowing exactly what he is looking for. Throughout his life, he projects this image on real women, trying to find the one that will perfectly match the internal template. At the beginning of the marriage, the wife probably carried this projection. She seemed to be all he needed, the embodiment of his deepest desires. But over time, reality has been eating away at the fantasy. She turned out to be human, flawed, different from the perfect image he had projected, and when the projection falls, that magical feeling of completeness goes with it. Then you appear at the exact moment when he is vulnerable, psychologically available to make a new projection. And without consciously understanding what is happening, he begins to see in you all those qualities that his anima requires. You become the bearer of his unfulfilled dreams, the representative of everything he thinks is missing in life. This projection is incredibly powerful because it stirs the deepest layers of his unconscious. It is not superficial attraction based only on physical appearance or compatibility of interests. It is something that touches on his existential thirst, on the hunger to integrate parts of his own soul that have become fragmented. When he looks at you, he feels like he's finally found the missing piece for him to feel complete. His marriage became too functional. His wife became a logistics partner, mother of the children, manager of the house. The dimension of feminine mystery, that force that should keep him fascinated, evaporated in practical coexistence. It is too real, too well-known, too domesticated. There is no more room for idealization. You already exist in a territory where fantasy can still operate freely. You don't have to do anything extraordinary to keep this projection active. Just because you are not inserted in his routine, because you are not part of daily obligations and responsibilities, you automatically occupy a special place in the male psyche. You are the exception, the escape, the portal to another reality where it may be different from what it has become. The danger of this dynamic is that it is fundamentally unsustainable. Projections eventually fall. If your relationship were to move towards something concrete, he would discover that you are also human. You also have flaws. It can also become routine. But as long as the projection is active, you exert an almost supernatural magnetism on it. He feels that to be close to you is to be close to his own soul. This is one of the reasons why men risk everything for cases like this. It's not just physical pleasure or ego being massaged. It is the deep, yet illusory feeling of finally finding yourself through someone else. He looks at you and sees not just a woman, but the promise of rebirth, of regaining parts of him that he thought he had lost forever. And that promise, even though it's built on sand, feels more real than anything he has at home. 4. The ideal woman who lives in his head. Inside every man's mind, there is a woman who never ages, never complains, never charges, and is always available exactly as he needs it. She is not based on any real person he has met. It is a psychological construct formed from childhood, fueled by fragmented experiences, cultural idealizations, and unfulfilled desires. This inner figure is simultaneously a welcoming mother, passionate lover, understanding friend, and inspiring muse. The problem arises when this idealized image collides with reality. No woman of flesh and blood can permanently live up to this impossible ideal. The wife began as a promise to materialize this fantasy, but inevitably revealed herself to be a complex person, with her own needs, variable moods, and very human imperfections. And the more time passes, the more the distance between the real woman and the ideal woman increases. He can't consciously articulate it. He does not deliberately think about having a perfect image in his head, but he feels a constant dissatisfaction, a vague feeling that something is missing, that life should be different. This frustration has no name or address, so he carries it like a silent weight, thinking that the problem is in him or her, without realizing that he is competing with a ghost. When you come up, something interesting happens. Since he doesn't know you deeply yet, his brain has total freedom to fill in the gaps with projections. He imagines what you would be like in situations you have never witnessed. Fantasize deep conversations that you may never have. It creates a version of you that perfectly matches his inner mold. And because you are not present in the suffocating everyday, this idealized image remains intact. The woman at home broke the illusion a long time ago. He sees her without makeup, tired, stressed, human. He sees her complaining of pain, worried about money, angry about real problems. There is no glamour. There is no mystery. There is no magic. The naked reality destroyed any possibility of idealization, but you still inhabit the realm of potential, where anything is possible and nothing has been tested by real coexistence. This ideal woman inside his head promises impossible things: total acceptance without judgment, eternal passion without effort, deep understanding without the need for explanation. She's never too tired. She never has a headache. She never says no. It exists precisely to satisfy his needs, without presenting his own needs that require reciprocity. The wife has no way to compete with this fictional version. She's real, your fantasy. It carries the weight of shared responsibilities. You represent freedom. It shows vulnerability and imperfection. You remain shrouded in unfulfilled potential. It's a profoundly unfair competition, but one that happens entirely inside his head. The most ironic thing is that if he dropped everything to be with you in a matter of months or years, you would become the new version of the current wife. Reality would do its inevitable job of destroying idealization, and then he'd be back at the beginning, feeling that the ideal woman exists somewhere. It's just not you, because this woman never existed and will never exist outside of his imagination. But as long as the fantasy lasts, you occupy a privileged psychological place. You are simultaneously everything he has lost and everything he can still have. It is the glorious past and the promising future, materialized in a person he barely knows but on whom he projects all hopes. And this type of projection creates an emotional dependence so strong that it can make a man question absolutely everything he has built, only to chase an illusion that seems more real than reality itself. 5. Why the forbidden is more exciting. There is a specific brain chemistry that happens when a man desires something he shouldn't have. Prohibition does not diminish desire. It multiplies it exponentially. The brain releases an explosive combination of dopamine, adrenaline, and cortisol that creates a sense of being more alive than it has felt in years. It's literally addictive, like a powerful drug that completely alters your state of consciousness. Think about how the human mind has always worked. When something is easily accessible, available effortlessly, the perceived value plummets. But when there is an obstacle, danger, risk of loss, each small achievement becomes a disproportionate trophy. The married man has full access to his wife. It is there, available, without the need for hunting or conquest. And his primitive brain interprets this as uninteresting, because there is no challenge. There is no genuine victory. With you, it's different. Each stolen moment becomes precious precisely because it is forbidden. Every hidden message, every hasty meeting, every lie he has to tell to create a gap in time, all add layers of intensity that simply don't exist in the official relationship. He's not just getting to know you, he's transgressing, taking risks, living dangerously. And for a man numbed by security, this is pure ecstasy. The adrenaline rush of risk makes everything seem more intense. Colors become more vivid, sensations more acute, time denser. When he's with you, he knows he can be discovered at any time. He knows that he is doing something wrong, dangerous, potentially destructive. And paradoxically, that's exactly what makes the experience unforgettable. The same kiss that would be routine at home turns into something cinematic when it happens surrounded by prohibition. Another crucial psychological component is the feeling of autonomy. His life became a sequence of obligations and expectations. He needs to be the responsible provider, the present father, the reliable husband. Each decision is limited by previous commitments. There is no real room for genuine choice. But when he decides to be with you, even if it's wrong, he's exerting power over his own life in a way he hasn't done in years. It is a silent rebellion against the cage that he himself built. The ban also creates a time bubble where the normal rules are suspended. When you are together, there are no bills to pay, no children to educate, no mother-in-law to visit. There is only the present moment, charged with urgency because it can be interrupted at any moment. This time pressure intensifies every second. There is no room for boredom or distraction. Everything is hyper-focused, hyper-present, hyper-real. His brain starts associating you with this addictive chemical cocktail. It is not exactly you he wants, but the altered state of consciousness that your presence causes. It is the feeling of transgressing, of being alive, of choosing something of his own without asking anyone's permission. You become inextricably linked to this chemical experience, and he interprets it as love or special connection, when in fact it's just an adrenaline addiction. The deep irony is that if the two of you were to get together officially, all that chemistry would quickly disappear. Without the prohibition, without the risk, without the transgression, there would be only two ordinary people trying to build a life. And he would probably find himself bored again, looking for the next source of adrenaline, because it was never about you specifically. It was about the feeling that the forbidden situation provided. But at this moment, he can't distinguish. All he knows is that being around you produces sensations that he doesn't experience anywhere else. He confuses brain chemistry with destiny, adrenaline with true passion, transgression with liberation. And the more he dives into this dynamic, the more difficult it is to go back, because his brain is already conditioned to seek that specific dose of intensity that only the forbidden situation offers. 6. The version of him that only you awaken. When he's with you, something fascinating happens. He's not the same man who comes home every day. It is as if there are two of him inhabiting the same body, and in his presence the forgotten version finally gains permission to breathe. This is not the person burdened with responsibilities. It is not the tired husband. It is not the worried father. It's an earlier version, lighter, more intense, more like who he used to be before life completely tamed him. With his wife, he became a fixed character. There is a defined role that he needs to play, a series of expectations consolidated over the years. She expects certain behaviors, certain reactions, a certain version of him, and he delivers that on autopilot, because it's what keeps the peace, what sustains the structure, what avoids unnecessary conflicts. But this version is only a fraction of who he really is. In your presence, he can experience being different. It can tell stories that no one else listens to carefully. You can express opinions that would be criticized at home. It can be funny without anyone rolling their eyes because they've heard that joke 1,000 times. You can be vulnerable without seeming weak, or confident without being accused of arrogance. You haven't categorized it yet, you haven't put it in a specific box of rigid expectations. This freedom to be multiple, not to be trapped in a single identity, is incredibly seductive. He feels he can finally reveal layers of himself that have been buried under years of marital routine. You can talk about dreams you have abandoned, show vulnerabilities you hide, express desires you have learned to censor. And you, because you don't have a complete history of it, receive all this with freshness, without the weight of accumulated judgment. The wife knows her intimate flaws all too well. She saw him fail. She saw him weak. She saw him in moments he would rather forget. Each time he tries to reinvent himself or show a different facet, she unconsciously pulls him back into the known version of him. It is a type of identity prison that forms naturally in long relationships. People fixate you on an image and resist when you try to escape it. But you don't have that history. For you, he can be whoever he wants. It can only tell the stories where he is the hero. It can highlight his qualities without anyone immediately remembering his flaws to balance. You can build a narrative of yourself that is more interesting, more vibrant, closer to how it would like to be seen. And when you reflect that image back to him, he feels more real in that version than he does in the home version. The version of him that you know feels more true precisely because it has not been tested by daily reality. It was not eroded by arguments about money, stress with children, sleepless nights, health problems, existential crises lived side by side. You inhabit a protected space where only the best aspects are allowed. It's a bubble where it can be idealized without the constant friction of real life. The danger is that he begins to believe that this version is who he really is, and that the version at home is an external imposition. He thinks you've brought out his true self, when in reality, you've just offered a context where he can pretend to be different without immediate consequences. But that distinction is hard to realize when he's immersed in the experience, feeling more alive and authentic than he's felt in years. And so he is torn between two identities: the man he has become through the years of marriage, and the man he imagines himself to be when he is with you. And because the second version is more exciting, lighter, closer to his dreams, it's the one he wants to preserve, even if it means destroying everything he's built to sustain the illusion that he can actually live like that person all the time. 7. What he really looks for in you. If you think it's about sex, you're only seeing the most obvious surface. What he is looking for in you is something much deeper and more disturbing: the feeling of being alive again. I don't live in the biological sense, but I live in the existential sense, that internal vibration that he used to feel before life turned into an endless series of fulfilled obligations. He seeks recognition, Not the automatic recognition he receives at home for paying bills, but being seen as someone interesting, desirable, still capable of provoking fascination. His wife stopped looking at him like that years ago. For her, he is functional, necessary, but he is no longer that man who made her heart race. It became emotional furniture, always present but rarely noticed with genuine admiration. When you show real interest in him, something inside him violently awakens. He remembers what it's like to be chosen, to be desired, to be a priority in someone's attention. He remembers that he exists beyond the functions he performs, that it is not just the husband, the father, the provider, but an individual with his own presence who can be fascinating in his own right. There is a search for primitive male validation. Deep down, every man wants to prove that he is still capable of conquering, of seducing, of being chosen. Marriage eliminated this dynamic of conquest. There is no more challenge, no more proof of value. But when you respond to his advances, when you demonstrate that he still has the power of attraction, it feeds a psychological need that has been ignored for a long time. He also looks for a mirror where he can see himself differently. His wife knows him too well. She sees all the contradictions, all the weaknesses, all the daily mediocrity. She can no longer see it through the lens of idealization. But you still can. You reflect back to him a more generous, more interesting, nobler image of what he really is. And every human being prefers to believe in the improved version of himself. There is a dimension of rescue of the lost self. Before getting married, having children, taking on overwhelming responsibilities, he had specific dreams about who he would be. He had an idealized image of the future, full of adventure, freedom, infinite possibilities. None of this came to fruition. Real life has shaped him into something much more ordinary, much more limited. When he's with you for a few moments, he can pretend there's still a way back. He tries to feel that there is still history to be written. The wedding seems like a book almost finished, where the next chapters are perfectly predictable. Retirement, grandchildren, joint aging. Everything mapped out, with no real surprises. But you represent the possibility of a completely different plot, a radical deviation in the narrative. And for someone suffocating on predictability, that's irresistible. It's not that he doesn't love his wife or doesn't value his family. It's just that these things have become context, not content. They have become the setting where life happens, but they are no longer life itself. It works in this scenario. It fulfills expectations. It keeps everything organized. But he feels that he is just existing, not really living. The tragic thing is that all this he seeks is fundamentally an illusion. The intensity, the recognition, the feeling of being alive, everything is temporary and based on the absence of shared reality. But as long as this phase lasts, you offer him something he feels he no longer has anywhere else. The promise that he can still be more than he has become. 8. The price he pays for that desire. Every forbidden desire exacts an invisible price that goes far beyond the obvious consequences of being discovered. Even before any external explosion, something inside him begins to silently disintegrate. The first thing that dies is inner peace. That quiet place inside the mind where he used to rest simply ceases to exist. Now there is a constant war between what he wants and what he knows he should do. He wakes up at dawn with his heart racing, not from excitement, but from pure anxiety. The mind never stops. He is always calculating risks, creating preventive lies, compulsively checking messages, erasing traces. What started as something liberating turns into an even more suffocating prison. Now he is not free anywhere, because he carries guilt and fear wherever he goes. The fragmentation of identity is brutal. He needs to be a man at home, another with you, and still try to maintain some coherent version of himself when he's alone. But these versions begin to enter into violent conflict. He no longer knows who he really is. He looks in the mirror and sees a stranger, someone capable of lying with increasing ease, someone who betrays not only his wife but the very values he believed he had. The lies multiply exponentially. It starts with small omissions, then outright lies, then lies upon lies to cover up inconsistencies. He needs to remember exactly what he said to each person, keep the stories coherent, never waver. This consumes absurd mental energy. The brain was not made to sustain parallel realities for long. Eventually, he begins to make mistakes, to confuse details, to leave gaps. Guilt works as a slow-acting poison. It may be that in the beginning, he manages to justify, rationalize, create narratives where he is the victim of a dead marriage. But deep down, in a layer he desperately tries to ignore, he knows he's doing damage. He knows that if his wife finds out, it will be devastating. He knows that his children, if any, can completely lose the image they have of him. He begins to lose respect for himself. As much as you try to convince yourself that you are only looking for happiness, that you deserve it, that life is too short, there is an implacable inner voice that does not accept these excuses. That voice whispers that he's weak, that he's being cowardly, that he's choosing immediate pleasure over integrity. And each time he ignores that voice, it gets louder, more impossible to silence. Relationships with people close to you begin to deteriorate in subtle ways. He is emotionally distant, even when he is physically present. The wife feels that something is wrong, but cannot identify what. Friends notice changes in behavior. He isolates himself more because maintaining the facade requires constant effort, and he simply does not have the energy for genuine connections. The quality of what he has with you also degrades. In the beginning, it was intense, exciting, liberating. But as time goes by and reality begins to infiltrate, demands, expectations, insecurities arise. You start wanting more. He can't give. He promises things he cannot fulfill. The dynamics that were light become heavy. His mental health is going into progressive decline. Anxiety becomes a constant companion. You may develop panic attacks when you think you will be discovered. You lose the ability to feel genuine joy because everything is tainted by duplicity. Even the moments that should be good are tainted by guilt. Eventually, one of three things happens. He is discovered and faces the complete explosion of everything he tried to avoid. He finishes and spends the rest of his life carrying the secret weight. Or he actually leaves everything to be with you and discovers too late that he has destroyed a lifetime of chasing an illusion. In any scenario, the price is higher than any pleasure you have experienced.